The internet says the Switch 2 is overpriced, launched with no games/bad games, and isn't enough of an upgrade over the original Switch. And after using one for months, I honestly think people are being way too hard on it. And before you click off, hear me out, because when you actually compare the Switch 2 to the original Switch launch, compare the prices to modern consoles, and look at everything the system can already do, a lot of complaints start to fall apart. First, the games aren't actually what you think. Second, the prices are actually fair. And third, people forget this is a sequel console, not some completely brand new idea. So let's start with the games. The Switch 2 launched with a surprisingly strong lineup. Depending on what you count as launch day games, launch window games, and Switch 2 editions, there was actually a decent amount to play right away. And there are still more first party games coming throughout the first and second year. Now, if we compare that to the original Switch and we don't count ports, the Switch really only had a handful of major first party releases in its first year. If you count ports, it goes up a bit, but many of those were games people already had played before. And some of you might be thinking, yeah, but the Switch had amazing launch games. And that's true. It launched with 1-2 Switch, Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, Breath of the Wild, and later Mario Odyssey. And honestly, that's a really strong start. But if you look at it, the Switch 2 has a similar situation. The original Switch had 1-2 Switch, which was basically a demo game, showing off the console, and I actually liked it, but for $60, it really wasn't worth the price. The Switch 2 has its own demo style game with Welcome Tour. Sure, it might not be as fun as 1-2 Switch, but at $10, it makes a lot more sense than $60 for 1-2 Switch. The Switch launched with Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, which is a port of a Wii U game. Meanwhile, the Switch 2 launched with Mario Kart 8 World, which is a completely new game. The original Switch eventually got Mario Odyssey, a brand new 3D Mario adventure. The Switch 2 got Donkey Kong Bonanza, a brand new 3D Donkey Kong game that fills a similar role in the lineup. And yes, the Switch launched with Breath of the Wild, which is one of the greatest games ever made, but people forget that it was originally developed for the Wii U and also launched on the Wii U. The Switch 2 doesn't have a brand new Zelda yet, but it does have upgraded versions of the Switch Zelda games, Wind Waker on GameCube, and more GameCube games coming to the service, along with the new Ocarina of Time remake. And the funny thing is, people complain about ports now, but the original Switch relied heavily on ports when it launched, and still is. And I'm comparing all this to one of the best-selling consoles of all time. So the launch lineup really isn't as bad as people say, and honestly, I think there's one thing people completely ignore when talking about the Switch launch lineup. Backwards compatibility. Even if you don't think the Switch 2 launched with enough brand new games, the console immediately gives you access to thousands of Switch games. That's something the original Switch couldn't do. On day one, Switch 2 owners could play Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, Smash Ultimate, Tears of the Kingdom, Animal Crossing, Metroid, and countless third-party games. You don't have to wait years for the library to grow because the library is already there, and I think that makes the launch feel much stronger than people give it credit for. Now let's talk about price, because this is the biggest complaint people have. Everyone keeps saying the console is too expensive, the games are too expensive, and people are upset about paying for game chat and online features. But if you actually compare prices, the Switch 2 isn't as nearly as crazy as some of you make it sound. The Switch OLED is about $400 now, while the Switch 2 launched at $450 and is about to turn into $500. That's about $50 to $100 difference. Is that more expensive? Absolutely. But when you consider that the Switch 2 has significantly stronger hardware, better performance, new features, a larger screen, and launched years after the original Switch, that price starts to make a lot more sense. Now, the games being $70 or $80 is definitely expensive. I agree with that. Paying $80 for something like Mario Kart is a lot of money. But the truth is that $70 has become the standard price for third-party games across much of the industry, and they give you plenty of time to pick up Mario Kart for $50, and you still can for a while longer with the Best Sellers game bundle. Nintendo isn't the only company charging more for games. When it comes to online services, Nintendo is still one of the cheaper options. Nintendo Switch Online with the expansion pack is $50 a year. Xbox Game Pass Ultimate and PlayStation Plus Premium both cost significantly more annually. Now, obviously, those services offer different benefits, so they're not a perfect comparison, but Nintendo's online service is still one of the least expensive ways to access online play and a large collection of retro games. But honestly, I think all of that misses the biggest reason people are disappointed with the Switch 2. The Switch 2 is a sequel console. It literally has the name Switch 2. Nintendo isn't trying to hide what it is, but it's the next version of the same idea. But for some reason, a lot of people expected it to completely reinvent gaming or introduce some crazy gimmick. And honestly, I don't think that was ever the point. The original Nintendo Switch was already one of the most successful consoles ever made. The entire concept of the system, switching between handheld and TV, was already perfect for a lot of people. So instead of replacing that idea, Nintendo decided to improve it. That's why the Switch 2 focuses on upgrades rather than reinvention. It still switches between TV mode and handheld mode, but now it supports things like 4K, higher frame rates, better hardware, a stronger dock, and a much nicer screen. Those improvements might not sound revolutionary, but they make the system feel like a much more powerful version of the same console people already love. And honestly, that approach has worked before. Think about other successful consoles. The PlayStation 2 wasn't some completely new idea compared to the PlayStation. It was just a better version with stronger hardware. The same thing happened with the Xbox 360 improved on the Xbox, or the PlayStation 5 upgrading from the PlayStation 4. That's how console generations usually work. They refine the idea and not completely replace it. And in the case of the Switch, the original design was already so good that changing it too much could actually make things worse. The Switch 2 just takes everything the first system did and makes it faster, smoother, and more powerful. And honestly, that's exactly what I wanted from a sequel, and I love it. I got the Switch 2 version of Breath of the Wild, and it genuinely made me appreciate that game in a completely new way. I own the Switch 2 obviously, and it's honestly my favorite console of all time. Part of that is probably nostalgia because I remember getting my first Switch when I was younger, and that was such a great experience, but even now, the Switch 2 still feels special. The games are great, the hardware feels better, and the whole system just works. Even the Joy-Cons have been great for me. They haven't fallen apart or anything, just take care of your stuff, and remember it's a gaming console, not Thor's hammer. Electronics can break sometimes, but overall, I think the Switch 2 is an amazing console. And honestly, I think people are being way too hard on it. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. Let me know what you think about the Switch 2, and if you enjoyed the video, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Oh, and by the way, follow my Twitch and my TikTok so you don't miss any of the extra content. Make sure you subscribe if you enjoy, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.